Jana. It's a good day
Hello.
today. I started off the day really well because they had a wonderful tribute to Captain Tom, who's just, everybody's embraced him as a wonderful character during this bleak time. He's 100 years old today. And what was fantastic was there was a fly past of a Spitfire and a Hurricane that flew over his house 3 times and did a salute to him. And that was special. Prime Minister talked to him as well. And I was just loads of very nice things. But what struck me in particular was when the World War II fly past went over, he said he remembered when they were going over in anger and despair. And it was nice to see them, you know, in a different light. So it is very important to remember, you know, that generation had very bleak times, but there have been many years of happiness, and we've got to think about that, haven't we?
Absolutely. Everything in the world is temporary. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing is written in stone ever. It just, they went through unthinkable things. I know that because of my family background and Gestapos and concentration camps. So I know how horrible it was. They got through it, and compared to that, this is, this is not nearly as horrible as the stories I know about and heard, and my grandparents lived through. So, fantastic. What an accomplishment, and it's really sad that 100-year-old can give encouragement to others, and there are people 1/3 of his age and, don't have such a fantastic attitude, and what an amazing person.
An amazing person. I'm a little bit sad that my auntie, who died just before this lock-in, she was in her late 90s. Even now, I'm worried about saying her age because she was very against anybody knowing her age. And yet,
I get that.
if she had revealed it, people would have celebrated it because she was remarkable for her age, absolutely remarkable. But she just didn't want people to know how old she was. People are very sensitive about it. But it is nice to be able to celebrate somebody's achievements, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, we are getting older and we're aging. And did you know that there's 13,000 over 100-year-olds in the UK? And 85,000 over 100-year-olds in the US. Well, I mean, it's fantastic.
Well, when I was a junior reporter, very junior, one of my early jobs was to go and meet a lady who was 100, and that was very rare, very rare. Yeah. So it was a big story because she was 100.
Yeah.
And as you say now, it is quite commonplace.
If you go to any card store, and I'm looking for it when I go to card stores, and I always go, do they have 100-year-old card? And all of them do.
Yes, they do.
There's just too many people who
there are banners. You can buy banners with 100 now.
Yeah,
you couldn't get that before.
And there was an advertising a couple of years ago, which started with a 104-year-old on a treadmill. And that made me really depressed because I don't like going on a treadmill and I'm so much
younger. Yes, I'm not much good on the treadmill either. And my auntie, it has to be said, about a year ago was doing 100 steps on a treadmill.
What?
And every day she would do her exercises and cream her legs and make sure that her skin was good. And, look after her feet. She was very, very remarkable. That's why it was so annoying when she wouldn't celebrate her age.
The age,
People would never have known anyway, because she looked younger. But they would have said, "What, you were doing all of that, and you were this age? You're not far off 100." It has to be said. And it just is remarkable. And you know, today I have been thinking also the fact that I've done some interviews with older people who have told me their stories, and they are very interesting. I just wish I'd spoken to my parents a bit more about their experiences. I do know a few, but if I'd done what I call a proper interview, it would have been fabulous. But from the sound of it, it sounds like you've got some dark, deep stuff in your family. Did
Ooh.
your grandparents talk about it then?
Yeah, I saw my grandparents every weekend because we went to their house on weekends, and I listened to my grandpa, and I think that's where I started my potential depression, because it was talking about concentration camps, about Germans, about how he got arrested by Gestapo, what he had to eat in there, what happened in there. And I have to say, I've heard all the stories, everything. I've been to Auschwitz and I've been to other concentration camps. I've heard all the stories, but the story he has, that's the worst one I ever heard, and it's not pretty. It's just absolutely shocking. And when my mother told me about, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago at Christmas dinner, and I was in absolute shock. I was in absolute shock. I didn't think that something so inhuman was actually possible. So wow, yeah. And of course, it's a then it goes into your DNA, and it went to my mother, then it went to me, and you need to somehow stop the vicious circle. But I loved how he coped with it. Of course, it hurt him for the rest of his life, but funnily enough, he never told me go and hate Germans. Never. Just like my parents had to live under 1968, where the Russians came over to the country and occupied it, and they were, they had guns and they were pointing them at my parents, who were in their 20s. And my parents never told me to go and hate Russians. They said they're generally lovely people, and they just they had their orders, and who didn't respect an order would end up in Siberia. So I never ended up hating Germans or Russians for what they've done to my country, which I thought that actually takes guts to do, because it's not very common.
Remind people where you're from, because not everybody knows.
I'm Prague born, so Czech Republic, Central Europe, and of course, we were the first country or one of the first countries to get involved in Second World War. It was very unhappy times, absolutely dreadful, awful, and and my family paid for it quite badly. So not good, not happy times, but one has to step out of it.
I had the pleasure of going to Prague a couple of years ago now at Christmas time. It was beautiful. I mean, it was a lovely, lovely city. And the clock, famous clock in the city is wonderful. It's the most amazing piece of equipment. I must admit, in the apartment that we were staying in the center of the city, it did occur to me, I wonder what this apartment knows, what's in its DNA. I did think of that at the time, but the people were so splendid, so lovely. And Christmas in Prague, I don't think there is a prettier place on earth, I don't think.
Oh, I love you. I love you. I always have, but now even more. Yeah, Prague is fantastic. It's always, it always comes up as a first place, or one of the first places people look for when going on holidays, and especially Christmas. So it is lovely, but the history we had to go through, very interesting. I don't think that most people can imagine that, and that's why maybe occasionally Prague could come across slightly melancholic, beautiful, but there's a special atmosphere about it. And I'm sure that it's also because of these things which happen there.
Yes.
So still a very happy place, but it's a place which makes you think, and not every town or city is like that.
Yes. Well, we have to think of the things that have gone on in years gone by, but certainly just coming back to Major Tom, he is a very positive man, really positive. And so just wrapping up, just before my aunt's funeral, which wasn't that long ago, I was looking through her documents and I came across a little card, and it was very old, very sort of like dog-eared, and I actually took a copy of it and sent it to my family on our family group chat, and it's called "Don't Quit," and I'll show you here at the moment. Very, very old document, really.
Oh
Really
yeah.
old. And I
Oh
said,
yeah.
yeah. And what was amazing was this week you've posted the same thing, "Don't Quit," and
Yes.
also it's featuring in an advert at the moment, and I've
Oh
never heard
really?
of
I
it.
didn't know that.
I can't remember. I think it's for Building Society. I'll have to check that out. But
Okay.
it's just like it's struck a chord with people, and I'd never heard of it before. So you've had some reaction to your posting of it.
Oh yes, I
"Don't
put it
Quit."
on my Facebook group and on my Instagram, and people really enjoyed it. So because it's called "Don't Quit," and there's lots of people now who do feel like quitting, and I'm saying no, don't do it. There's a way. There's always a way forward. You don't need to quit ever. It's not optional. So shall we maybe make a video just about how not to quit?
I think that could be a very good discussion, and maybe I'll find that little card,
Oh,
and
that would be
maybe read it
fantastic.
out. But it is definitely worth remembering, and I think that is what Major Tom. He hasn't quit. You know, he's doggedly walked around with his walking frame because he had a hip operation, and he
Yeah.
hasn't quit. And he's raised an enormous amount of money
Oh, what an amazing
for the
person. You know, you
NHS.
just
Yeah,
want to go
it's
and hug
lovely.
him.
You
Yeah.
do, but he's such a quiet, unassuming, nice person. You can see he's a nice person.
That he's nice and he's genuine, you
Yes,
know. And he's a reminder to all of us, yes, times get really tough,
yeah,
but if you don't let them destroy you, they won't.
yes. And also, he hasn't let the publicity surrounding him go to his head. He seems to
He's
be
a
just the
megastar
same.
now.
He's just the same man that was interviewed, right at the beginning. He's still very unassuming, caring about other people rather than himself. And so it's nice that stardom isn't going to his head. So that's another thing as well.
Absolutely, totally. So it's
So
lovable.
we won't let
Yeah.
stardom go to our heads, will we?
No, 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 no. Still two lovely girls chatting about
Having a
how we.
chat. Okay,
Yeah.
well, this was a good one, and we wish everybody well today, and we wish Major Tom happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Tom.
Happy
Wow.
birthday, Tom. So thank you. Thank you, Jana.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.